Procurement and purchasing are really two essential parts of any company's operations. And even if you are a small company and it's all together as one, it's still important that you understand what each of them do. Anyone that's in business at the global supply chain, should understand, and to some extent, these differences. Hi, this is Anita, the Global Trade Gal. Today, I want to talk a little bit about procurement versus purchasing. I want to kind of explain what some of the differences are. I want to first say that actually, the global supply chain and the supply chain in general, it can be very technical. It can be very complicated, especially for someone who's coming from the outside. Even very simple things like what's a sales contract versus an invoice. It can sometimes be a bit overwhelming because there can be many terms that can be used that maybe you don't understand. And one of those could be what is procurement versus purchasing, and how are they different, or are they the same thing? Well, actually, procurement in the global supply chain is the strategic process of buying goods. Procurement involves a careful analysis of internal and external data to ensure you make the best decision possible. So really, procurement is sort of like it's the data, it's the looking at, what's the best decision you can make to be able to purchase goods. It's a lot about building relationships. It's about the company establishing relationships and maintaining relationship with the vendors, that they can deliver the products at the quality, quantity, and at the time that's desired. I want to just make a comment here that you can never underestimate the power of a relationship. We live so much in a digital world today that, people have gotten used to having meetings on Zoom, and they've, maybe we've forgotten some about this personal relationship, but still, a personal relationship is still very important. And whether it's with sales, whether it's with your vendor, whatever it is, it's still important to have that personal relationship, because it can many times make a difference between your success or failure, or it can make a difference between them being willing to help you and not help you. I'm a great believer that, face to face is important, that it is good to be able to sit down with someone, at least sometimes, and be able to see them face to face and say, hi, my name's Anita, and hi, how are you doing? And just be able to talk to them as two human beings talk to one another. I don't think we can ever underestimate the power of that personal touch, especially today in this digital world. The other goal of procurement is to acquire, everything that a business needs to operate at a profit. Or in other words, to be able to buy products at a fair price. A lot of times this again has to do with relationships. If you have a good relationship with a vendor, then, you can talk to them about things. Hey, why is this price this? Can we do this instead? Or what do we need to do to make this happen? So procurement is really about obtaining goods and services, usually for business purposes. It's associated with business. It's basically about that a business needs the services and goods, and they usually need them at a larger scale. So they're going to be able to procure or be able to purchase those things. It's really a critical part of any company's operations. Companies are usually on both sides of the procurement process. You think about it. Most companies, they're buying and selling something. So, they're either they're either selling something to their own customers, which in the sense that they become then the vendor, and they're buying from a vendor. So, companies really are very much on both sides. So procurement is very much a critical aspect of anyone's supply chain. There's different types of procurement too. There is the direct procurement, which focuses on acquiring the products or services the business needs to produce its goods. This can include things like raw materials. If you're in manufacturing, you need to produce the raw materials. So you need to be able to buy those from a vendor. For example, in the furniture industry, if you want to make solid wood furniture, you need to be able to buy the solid wood. You need to be able to have the vendor that you can buy the solid wood for. That would be considered direct procurement. An indirect procurement could focus on products and services, needed for non-production operations such as office equipment or computers. Everything you need to help the business to be able to operate and the business activities to continue. But even then, even for the indirect, you want to be able to have a good relationship with your supplier. Do you have somebody that you buy computers from, and will they be able to come and help you if there's a problem or if your computers are broken down? Are you buying, some type of program from another supplier? And if you're buying a computer program from them, if the computer program fails, do you have a good relationship where you can call them and they'll say, hey, I'll come right over? All of this really makes a difference. It can make a huge difference for the business. So that's why at the very beginning we talked about, that relationships with the procurement is very important. And that's kind of like what the procurement department does. They build these relationships and they acquire, the products and services. So actually, purchasing, and this is where it gets confusing because, part of procurements is purchasing, but purchasing is part of the procurement process. So purchasing relates to all the transactional activities between your organization and the vendors. Purchasing can require some particular activities such as writing and submitting purchase orders, receiving invoices, receiving orders, payment for orders. All of those things can be part of the purchasing process. The primary focus of procurement is to acquire specific goods and services in the particular quantity and time you need. So the purchasing process is part of that process. There are usually some basic steps that take place. There will be a purchase requisitions where, it's usually an internal document used by the company to say we want to be able to buy this or we need to buy this. And then, the procurement department will go and then they will buy that, or the purchasing department, which is then inside the procurement department, will go and buy that. They'll do purchase orders, they'll do invoices, they'll do payments, and they'll do receipts. So, you kind of think of like procurement as the big bubble, and then you see purchasing as one of the aspects inside that bubble. Of course, if you're a small company, you probably don't have a procurement department and you don't have a separate purchasing department. You may have it all together as one, which is okay. But it's just good for you to understand the differences between these, because if you are working with bigger companies, you may find that there's the procurement department and then they send you over to the purchasing department, just so you understand the differences between what each of these do. This is really the main difference between procurement and purchasing, in that they're really, in a sense, they're almost like the same function, but they're kind of a little bit different, function between the two of them. Procurement and purchasing are really two essential parts of any company's operations. And even if you are a small company and it's all together as one, it's still important that you understand what each of them do. Anyone that's in business at the global supply chain, should understand, and to some extent, these differences. We hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. You've learned a little bit about procurement and purchasing and what each of them means and why they are a little bit different. And I know, I understand it can get a little bit confusing sometimes because, all of these terms that people use many times can be confusing, but it's kind of good to know and understand because you never know when you might need it. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, we hope you'll subscribe to us and continue to be part of our community. We love to talk about all things to do with global trade because, after all, we are the global trade. I am the global trade gal, I guess I should say. We'd like to thank our team that helps to make this all possible, and thank all of you that are out there listening.